Top-level peace talks between U.S. and Iran and Islamabad have failed, with U.S. Vice President announcing that they are heading back to the U.S. without any agreement. The talks, which were extended well beyond original schedule, went on for 21 hours before turning inconclusive.
At it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms.
Now, over the past 24 hours, discussions were held on topics including Strait of Hormuz, nuclear issue, war reparations, lifting sanctions, complete end of war against Iran. Iranian state media said that Iran-U.S. negotiations ended without an agreement. It further suggested that America's excessive demands prevented a common framework and agreement. The Iranian state media said that Iran repeatedly presented new initiatives and tried to invite the American side. However, U.S. stayed unrealistic, preventing the achievement of a common framework at each round. It further added that despite Pakistan's intervention early this morning, suggesting another round of talks and exchange of texts ended without a result due to the same American spirit. The spokesperson for the Iranian Foreign Minister, Ismail Bagheri, said the talks were conducted in an atmosphere of mistrust after 40 days of a war that was imposed by U.S. He added that the Iranian delegation was pursuing the rights and interests of the Iranian people, and it was natural not to reach an agreement in just one session. Bagheri said that some of the issues, such as the Strait of Hormuz, are more complicated than others. He concluded that Iran will continue its discussions and consultations with various regional allies. Now, just minutes after his press conference, U.S. Vice President left Islamabad for Washington. Vance boarded Air Force Two at 7:08 a.m. local time and waved to Pakistani officials from the top of the stairs. While Iranian delegation led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi left Islamabad an hour later. All right, to discuss more, we are now being joined by Stephen Golub from Venice, California. He is also a political analyst and lawyer. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, beginning with JD Vance's statement, 21 hours, no conclusion, no deal. Do you see these talks feeling as a sign that diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran is fundamentally over? And so what are the immediate implications of this failed deal?
Well, I certainly hope they're not over for all of our sakes. The U.S., India, the Middle East, the world. I hope and suspect that there will be one way or another future additional talks. Maybe not in person, maybe through back channels, maybe through intermediaries indirectly. But even though I think it's on one hand legitimate to say that these talks failed, these talks were less than 24 hours. And in the U.S. media, they're being called marathon talks. Well, I used to think of marathon talks as going for days or weeks or months. When the Obama administration negotiated a deal with Iran with the participation of other countries, those talks went on for 2 years before they finally reached a point where Iran agreed to limit its enrichment of uranium to avoid becoming close to having weapons-grade material. That went on for 2 years. 24 hours, when there are many more issues at stake, is nothing compared to that. And as long as I'm on that topic, let's remember the context that if Donald Trump had not terminated the Obama negotiated agreement, then we wouldn't be in this pickle to begin with. That is, Iran would not have had nuclear, nearly weapons-grade material at its disposal, nearly a half a ton of that, had Trump not terminated that agreement, which is one of the things, not the only thing, but that led to this war.
Absolutely. 21 hours, not less time to discuss all these issues. It of course shows how both sides were willing to actually take these talks. Mr. Golub, I would like you to just stay. We have some breaking news just coming in. I'll cross over to my colleague Shivan Chana, joining us from the newsroom. What is the latest that you can pick up, Shivan? Give us more.
First reaction, or I would say first social media post that has come in from Donald Trump after JD Vance and the US delegation left Pakistan without arriving at a deal or any kind of agreement with Iran. Well, Donald Trump, this is the first reaction. He's posted that he's posted this on his Truth Social, and he's posted an article which was published by justthenews.com. It's an online platform which was launched just very recently in 2020, and he's just posted the headline, the caption, basically, the Trump card the president holds if Iran won't bend, a naval blockade. And that's what Trump quotes. And then there is the link to the article beneath it. That's what the post looks like. I'll just quickly go over some excerpts from this article that Donald Trump has posted immediately on his Truth Social platform. And the article starts by drawing a comparison with what happened in Venezuela and what is happening currently in the Strait of Hormuz. And it says, before Trump launched a daring military capture of the dictator Nicolas Maduro, President Trump brought the Venezuelan economy to its knees with a naval blockade that strangled the nation's oil revenues. So he's talking about a naval blockade. That's what is referenced in this article, and that is what Donald Trump is quoting, or at least publishing in his own platform. If Iran refuses to accept the final deal, the US has offered Trump could bomb Tehran back to the Stone Ages as he had vowed, or he might just reprise his successful blockade strategy to choke an already teetering Iranian economy. And now this is where it gets interesting. This is teetering Iranian economy and ratchet up diplomatic pressure on China and India by cutting them off one of their key sources of oil. Now, these are just the first two paragraphs of that article that Donald Trump has posted as a first reaction after JD Vance and his team left from Pakistan. Very quickly, that threat of sending Tehran back to the Stone Ages, well, there was enough counter to that because of the number of times that threat got delayed and postponed by Trump himself. At least 5 times, and the 6th time, finally, there was a ceasefire which was announced by Pakistan as a request to Donald Trump. And then there are reports by the Financial Times and New York Times suggesting that that post, which was posted by the Pakistani Prime Minister, was in fact drafted for him by the US authorities and by the White House itself. So there was a sense, and this is what we've understood from all our guests who've joined us as well, most of them, they all feel, and this is what one reads into it, that there was a sense of urgency from the US side as well to arrive at a ceasefire because of the way this war was going. Just to remind our viewers, there were calls of a civilizational erasure for Iran just hours before finally agreeing to that ceasefire, which Pakistan requested from the US and from Iran. Now, the talks went on for 21 hours. Both sides went their separate ways. No agreement reached. Does this leave scope for further talks? Does this leave scope for the war to resume? That's what we'll need to wait and watch. But for now, this is the first reaction that's coming from Donald Trump, where he just quotes this article, which speaks very highly of him, but raises a lot more questions regarding, if you just look at the events that have transpired just in the last 1 week.
Absolutely, Shivan. Well, thank you so much for bringing this update, because, of course, that's, first reaction coming in from Trump, considering the fact that there were reports of 2 naval destroyers transiting the Strait of Hormuz just a few hours ago. Well, thank you, Shivan. We will, of course, come back to you if you get any more details on that. Mr. Golub, I'll come back to you with the same update that we're getting. Now we have Trump's reaction coming in, where he has now, in his Truth Social, he shared this naval blockade article after U.S.-Iran talks in Pakistan had ended without a deal. Now we know that Trump had earlier also said that whether we make a deal or not makes no difference. And with this kind of post that he has shared right after Vance announces no deal, do you think that is the premises of an escalation, and that with these U.S. assets already in the region?
Oh, man. Wow. When I hear Donald Trump, I'm kind of rubbing my head. When I hear Donald Trump likening the Iran situation to what he did in Venezuela, not only do I want to rub my head, I want to bang my head against the wall, because they're so fundamentally different in terms of Iran having many more resources and tools at its disposal, be they military or other strategic resources, including its control over the strait or ability to blockade the strait. It's so different in terms of what Trump is in effect threatening against India and China. You know, I'm tempted to say with friends like Trump, who needs enemies, but in any event, you know, what he's doing to these other two major powers, or threatening to do by such a blockade, and explicitly threatening to do, if I understood that excellent report correctly, which covered a lot of ground very well. So is there going to be an escalation? Well, as your correspondent put it very well, we've heard this before about Trump is going to step up. We'll never see destruction like this again. We've never seen destruction like what he's going to rain down on Iran. He said it again and then again and again. May he yet escalate far beyond the massive destruction that he already undertook against Iran. I guess it's conceivable, but he's not completely credible when it comes to that. And in terms of this blockade, it could have so many ramifications in terms of including counter steps against the U.S. I can't speak for what India might do, but China has tools at its disposal, not necessarily militarily by any means, although I understand it does have a few warships in the general region. But in terms of economic steps it could take, in terms of denying, key minerals to U.S. that China substantially controls, all sorts of other things it could do on a strategic or economic level that broadens this conflict in some dangerous and unpredictable ways. So I get back to likening this to what Trump did against Venezuela is just a mistake, but it doesn't surprise me that he's thinking along these lines, because he has tended to think that everything can be solved very simplistically. And as the Iran war has demonstrated, that's not the case. Reality is much more complicated than the way he sometimes views the world.
And also, maybe you'll go back to what JD Vance had said in his press conference. He said that he gave Iran best offer. In your understanding, what could have been the best offer that U.S. could have offered Iran at this point?
Well, first of all, let's just take whatever Donald Trump says with a grain of salt, because he's so much characterized by hyperbole in his claims, in his statements. He thinks the U.S. has completely won this war. Well, even though he never really put out what he exactly was after to begin with, or his claims of what he was seeking to accomplish have shifted from day to day to day. So in terms of what he was expecting exactly, whether he could have real hopes of accomplishing it, I don't think if he thought he was going to wrap things up within 23 hours by sending his vice president to Pakistan to negotiate that.